Okay, we're on lesson number 352 of the workbook of A Course in Miracles. And what's today's date? January 2nd. Oh, shouldn't I be starting the workbook again? It makes me laugh when I see people doing the workbook year in and year out. Ignoring statements such as Jesus makes when he says routine as such can be dangerous because the routine becomes a god unto itself. Um, the idea that you would do the lessons again also ignores the last part of the lessons that say our time for formal lessons is over. Now we've learned to open our mind and we've learned how to allow the Holy Spirit to have access to us and us to it by letting our mind shift into right-mindedness and look at everything differently. For me, and I can't tell anybody what to do. I'm not saying not to revisit the lessons. What I am saying is, though, it's set up as a year's program for a purpose, and it says that you will be given direction directly from your own guidance, because now you've learned and you've attuned and aligned yourself with the purpose of the atonement and salvation in the action of allowing your mind to have been corrected and to continue to be corrected by the access to the Holy Spirit in your right mind that you've been gaining. There are many lessons that you'll read. If you read them a second time, it is the denial of the occurrence of the opening of your mind to hear the Holy Spirit. Why would you want to continually impose that? Why would you want to, okay, we've done within 352 lessons. Many of you now are beginning to hear the Holy Spirit. If I go back, I'm reading a lesson that's telling me I don't hear it and I need to do these things to hear it. Allow yourself to have made the progress by just allowing yourself to follow the guidance that's given to you in the Course, not by human beings, including me. You got to, at some point in time, trust that the author of the Course knows what he's talking about, and you can be true to the words that you've been saying. And today's lesson is a good example, 352. Judgment and love are opposites. That's the beginning of the lesson. Okay, that's set up. That has set up. That statement set up and is the admission and proof that our mind is split. If we knew what love is and could live in the totality of the reality of love without breaking the communication from that, you would know already that love has no opposite. So while judgment isn't really an opposite, in the dream of separation, judgment and love seem to be set up in oppositional position because our mind is split and we actually think there are two choices. Okay? From one comes all the sorrow of the world, but from the other comes the peace of God himself. Okay. Without knowing anything, for a second, just pretend you've never read anything. You've never done A Course in Miracles. You haven't accumulated the concepts that allow you to think you're a teacher of God and know something. Just for a second, be a beginner right here, right now. Okay? Judgment and love are opposites. From one comes all the sorrow in the world, but from the other comes the peace of God himself. Okay, if someone said that to you and then offered you the choice, how could you possibly choose judgment? You would never in your right mind have chose judgment over love. So you must not have been in the right mind in the instant some choice was made in you, because now you have to choose once again. And I don't care how much intellectual, conceptual understanding or how much experience you've actually had. If you're reading this lesson, judgment and love are opposite. From one comes all the sorrow of the world, but from the other comes the peace of God himself. You are still in the condition where it's necessary to choose. Each moment choice is offered to us because you're in the condition of healing your mind and heart of the idea of separation, which has been presented to you, and which, if you could recognize within this, you're part of what has been holding the separation in place, which is okay with the admission, because now the choice is being offered to you. Just don't think you can solve the problem that this represents, but be certain that you can make the choice for the solution, and then give yourself the space and time in your mind for the solution to descend upon you into your upper room. What do you think occurred to the apostles on the feast in the moment of Pentecost? The Holy Spirit descended upon each and every one of them while they were gathered together, holding and waiting for the certainty of the promise of Jesus to be fulfilled. And in that instant, where the gathering was true, the Holy Spirit rushed in like the wind. They all had their experience and began to understand what it is, their new life as born again in Jesus and revitalized by the Spirit in the Pentecost was going to bring to them. And they went off into the world. They each got their marching orders. Forgiveness looks on sinlessness alone and judges not. Forgiveness. Now, okay, we see there's judgment and there's love. And you, in your mind, need to choose. Okay? Now, there must be a mechanism or something that you can choose that restores you to the awareness of love being whole and perfect without opposite. Okay? That's what forgiveness does. Through this, I come to you. Through forgiveness, I come once again to the Father as the innocent Son of God that he created me to be, in spite of my experiences in the world that seem to tell me that I've been judged and I've judged. Judgment will blind my eyes and make me blind, yet love, reflected in forgiveness here, reminds me you have given me a way to find your peace again. Okay, what is love here? Love is letting go of fear. What is forgiveness for? Forgiveness is a way in which, when we face moments of fear and guilt in our mind, we allow our mind to be shifted away from identifying with the ego, which fosters the experience of fear and guilt, and shift it toward the Holy Spirit, where he shows us the illusory and untrue nature of the fear and the guilt in relationship to who we are in reality as an experience of being whole and perfect in that instant. Okay? So, yet love reflected here. Remember, Jesus says there's only one way to God, and that's through forgiveness. Love reflected here in forgiveness reminds me you have given me a way to find me. I am redeemed when I elect to follow. Yes. As long as I begin to face each moment of fear and guilt with forgiveness, which is letting go of fear, which is the ability not merely to let go of the fear in the face of the fear still being there, the threat still being there, but being able to let go of the fear because we see through the eyes of the Christ and the grace of God, based on the ability of the Holy Spirit to enter our mind, we see that fear, what we thought and what we maintained as the reasonability for fear and guilt was never true, so that fear and guilt are false effects of an untrue idea about who we are. That once we begin to see it that way, we no longer have to believe the effects, the false effects, yet we can use them through the admission of the experience of fear and guilt as being the signal from the Holy Spirit that's time once again to allow our mind to refocus not on the ego and the world and space and time, but on the experience that comes within us when our mind shifts into the perspective of wholeness that is the Holy Spirit's understanding for you and your brother, not as a correction in the sense that there's actually a mistake, but as a correction for the idea that the perfection of who you are in creation could ever have been mistaken or be a mistake that would have needed correction. That's why it's a dream, and that's why this remains unreal and has no ability to be real. I have within me both the memory of you and one who leads me to it. So I have the memory of you, and now I remember, oh, that's what I have. There's something here that can help me find my way back there if I will allow it to be my guide rather than the ego to be my guide. Father, I would hear your voice and find your peace today, for I would love my own identity and find in him the memory of you. The shared memory of Christ is who we are. And remember, Jesus is just making the distinctions clear enough so that the choice becomes so obvious, and yet the necessity is still there for each and every one of us to choose and prove that we want that choice by allowing the space in our mind to not be filled by the clutter of the perceptual temper tantrums of the ego that are bound to follow when you stop choosing for it and begin to choose for the will of God through the utilization of forgiveness in your desire to allow the initial few words of this lesson to be true. Judgment and love are opposites. From one comes all the sorrow of the world, but from the other comes the peace of God himself. It's obvious when it's put that clearly which one you would choose. Now, make your choices true by not entertaining the machinations of the ego after you decide the one you want, and it begins to attack you once again to get your attention, because without your attention it has no power whatsoever, it has no life, and can't have any effect whatsoever as well.